In the present time, I checked my phone to see how long this outing had gone on. I couldn't remember the exact minutes, but at least an hour had passed. I could already picture the conversations between my parents and myself on how it must have went well because I was out as long as I was, and their request for me to provide detailed descriptions on everything from the service of the restaurant this particular evening to how titled to how tilted to the side of my head was when I was looking out the window. The only thing convincing me to fool around that restaurant any longer than I had been was Sam's persistence in staring at me. And it wasn't one of those looks that you give to a person while walking away from them, as at this point she was placing her hands over my arms and basically pinning me down to my car while looking into my eyes. Is there something you're searching for? I asked. Yeah, she said. I want to know how you could make such a good date have a bad ending. This isn't a bad ending. I was going to leave like I always do at the end. Yeah, but on our first date, you had to look. Look. The fire in your eyes. The I want to go out again flame. You can probably infer what took that away. I know, but I want the fire back and work for it. I gently took her hands off of me and moved to the other side of my vehicle, enabling me to enter the driver's seat and roll the window by the passenger seat down, Sam peeking her head through. Are you going to think about forgiving me? She asked. I've already done that, I told her. I'm just trying to get to trusting you again. I'll make it up to you, I hope. I rolled the window up. That wouldn't be the first time someone I felt a desire to be close with swore they would put effort into our time together. But I really hoped it wouldn't be the second time someone swore that and did the reverse. I was able to clear my thoughts enough to completely drive down the streets between the restaurant and my home. When I arrived at home, there was a small brown box on the porch, probably the result of one of my parents ordering something. I picked it up and lifted it into the house. Closing the door behind me, I could hear the faint sound of multiple televisions in the hallway, meaning my parents were probably watching some together, and my brother and sister were in their rooms. I could see my father's feet sticking out of the room as he was sitting in a chair close enough to the entryway. I walked in the opposite direction of where I'd viewed him, directing me to my own room, which looked entirely undisturbed. I could not sit down for less than 2 minutes before hearing a knock at my door. What happened? Sarah asked, running into the room. Nothing you need to concern yourself with, I told her, but it sounds like someone I should really concern myself with. If you think it's so important, maybe you could go on my next date. She smiled. Whoa, really? Certainly, I answered, provided that you get permission from our parents. But how come you can't tell them? I'm not the one seeking to go on any of my siblings' dates. She withdrew from the room, leaving my bedroom door ajar and her footsteps being audible as heading in the direction of my parents' room, her bare feet pressing firmly against the carpet. I remained in my room because of how loudly I expected everyone to speak and due to my own knowledge of how loudly they spoke. Can I go on Augustus's next date? Sarah asked rather bluntly. You better have a good reason for wanting to go with him, my father said, his voice having a certain sense of humor in it. Sarah folded her arms and looked down at the carpet, and being able to see her while she moved enough out of view to where her face was no longer visible from down the hallway. Given that a lot of parents are not big fans of various nonverbal cues that their children might employ to make known their distaste for whichever decision they made, I could only hope she retained a neutral expression. I want to see how he talks to them, Sarah told the two. Then I could come back and tell you what happened. So you want to turn into a snitch? My mother asked her. She nodded her head. Yep, Sarah replied. I'm sure he doesn't know you want him to do that. I'm sure he doesn't know you want to do that, my father said. This might be a good way to make sure that no one's doing anything too wacky. My sister nodded her head. Yeah, she answered. She abruptly ran down the hallway and into my room, throwing herself into my arms. I talked to them, she said. I know, I told her. Our parents are rather loud. But they didn't give me an answer. That's probably because you ran out of the room. Sarah! My father shouted from down the hallway. Come back here! His voice was relatively calm and she headed back into the room. Is there a reason you left out of here without saying anything? He asked. Yes, she answered. I was trying to get my idea approved by Augustus. Approved? Seems you've been keeping up with your vocabulary. The tone of my father's voice suggested there was some pride in knowing she could use words like that without relying on a dictionary. I closed my room door and telephoned Trey, who answered the phone in mere moments. Yeah, he asked in answering the phone. I was going to ask if you remembered my stint on bets. I said, that one website with the people posting memes and other stuff like that, yeah. Do you remember the one section where people put up little written statements inquiring if anyone wants to talk with them or be friends or just get to know each other, I asked? Yeah. I'm apparently going to have to go back on there if this thing with Sam doesn't work out. What was the problem with that website again? I moved over to sit on my bed. Just sitting where I am takes me back to all those mornings, afternoons, and evenings responding to the posts of several women on there and having maybe one and sometimes none reply back, I told him. You really messaged several and nobody said anything back? Yeah, that's what caused me to quit. I was tired of giving all that energy to people who didn't want to give it back even in the slightest. Remember, they couldn't see me and didn't even respond back to the first message in most cases. What else could I have done? I don't think anything at all. That's my point. Now I've got Sarah trying to ask our parents if she can come on my next date. Do you want her to? I'd rather she not, but these things are already boring, so she might liven up the mood. Maybe Sam might not want her to come along. I didn't want Sam to answer the phone for a guy she used to date while on a date with me, and she still did it. So it's the eye for an eye mentality, pretty much. And this probably confirms to you now how little I'm going to out of my way to look good to her. Doesn't doing that usually backfire both ways? Well, if I shower her with compliments, I look desperate. If I don't give her any compliments and do things opposed to showing interest, apparently some of that is either going to turn her on or convince her that I don't care, which could potentially swing in my favor. I remember my dad said that was how it worked when you treat someone really badly or like you don't care about them and then they get more wanting to talk to you. Wasn't that what Rivka did? Don't remind me. I could see, I could picture that one evening where that trait of hers became more evident. I was just sitting on this very mattress, but the room was rather dimmed as a result of it being the night hours and that corresponding with the time of the conversation between Rivka and myself. So you're not mad at me anymore? Rivka asked. You already apologized a million times, told her. It would be great if you could just stop doing it. Yeah. She was silent for the moment as though thinking something. But on the bright side, she said, me already wanting to roll my eyes because knowing that it would probably serve to annoy me, at least you got more attractive to me. I thought the purpose of our continued interactions was to further the attraction by getting to know each other. Then what you just said makes no sense given that it's the complete opposite of that. She laughed. I don't see what's funny about your contradictions, I told her. I like it when you ignore me, she said. Huh? I like it when you don't answer back. Then I'll make sure this is our last call. No. You don't have to do that. Then why would you admit that you get turned on unless I speak to you? Is that the perfect incentive to disappear for several days or weeks? Send a message and then repeat this process until you get over your strange addiction? She didn't answer. I hung up the phone. I recounted that story in the present time to Trey. She was just one woman, Trey said. Yeah, but I've only had about 3 women that I felt I could speak with and not put on some persona to get them to want to talk with me about most things, I told him. I thought she enjoyed those communications and that comment was in effect a slap in the face. Do you think Sam is like that too? I don't know. I really hope not. Maybe if you try telling her how you feel on the next date, that could work. Just sit her down and talk about things. Say you really don't want her to end up like other women you've liked, but that you hope she wants to be around you as much so you two can be when you're not at work or school. I almost laughed at his suggestion. Say that around the wrong person, you'll be called obsessive, I told him, letting out a laugh. Yeah, he admitted. But do you think she's the wrong one? I'm leaning toward no. I breathed a sigh, and that could have probably been heard several miles from my home, one that seemed to compose the entirety of air that had been collected in my lungs throughout the day, and was in the process of trying to purge it all together. It was as though my body knew I'd not be able to survive without the air and wanted to put me out of my misery. That was a big breath, Trey said. Took a lot of effort to get to that, I replied. I just realized something. What was that? If any of these chicks put as much effort in trying to form a relationship as I did letting that yawn out, I wouldn't be in this mess. I know maybe we can go catch a movie next week with your brother and sister. It might make you feel better. It probably would take my mind off things. I'll have to get my parents' approval, though. So I ran to the room, then slamming the door behind her loudly enough to be heard from my parents' room, who likely would be approaching my room the following moment to confront whoever they thought had committed the act. They said I could go with you, she told me. Good, I said. Now sit down. She moved to sit on my bed. This isn't going to be as easy as you think, I told her. I still have to get Sam's approval. Why wouldn't she want me to go? Sarah asked. When someone knows they're doing something wrong, they generally don't want witnesses to the event. I then gave a slight snicker. But then maybe she's not aware, I told Sarah. Maybe she's never known. What's funny about that? Sarah asked. The worst offender of any crime is the one that isn't smart enough to know that they're doing something wrong. I could hear Trey laugh on the other side of the phone. My ear was moved away from the device, and I had made the mistake of not turning it on to speaker so I could hear Sarah, but the volume was high enough for me to hear him. Make sure she doesn't keep looking away at her phone, Trey said, me now moving my ear to my phone so I could hear him fully. And if she gets up to leave saying she has to take a call, get even more skeptical.